All right. So as we look at Rob Dillingham now, another player whose name, when the college season ended, the NBA lottery conversation started to really spark up. He was somewhere in that top 7. Even saw him as high as 4 at one point early in the mock draft part of this whole conversation. And Derek, right now, Kentucky, we know that they provide and produce a lot of really good guards. Tyrese Maxey being one of them.
Even when they're hidden.
Even when they're hidden, they have those guys, and they still do have a lot of talented players there. But Dillingham was one. We'll get to one of his backcourt mates a little bit later, but he was one with his explosiveness, all the dribble package that he has, the ability to get to the rim and finish, his creativity, his big outburst in terms of scoring at 6'2", but he has now started to fall. Kyle and I and you and Bree, we were all looking at one of the mock drafts. Now have him falling to the Philadelphia 76ers at pick number 16. That's a big drop.
Well,
Why?
there's still a really wide range. Like I think ESPN still has him in like 6 or 7.
Sure.
So there's still some people who think that he's going to go high. There's still some people and teams who like him, but he's very polarizing. And you brought it up. Measured 6'1", without shoes.
And he's like 164 pounds.
Well, I was going to say, and the key is that he is also a 6'3" in wingspan, and he's really frail thin.
Yeah.
So he does a couple things really well. He shot nearly 50% on catch and shoot jumpers this past year, which is incredible. And I think he has a really good live ball dribble. He's really good at navigating screens.
Very good.
Shooting off the dribble. But he's 6'1" with a 6'3" wingspan and too frail to defend. Like he's one of those players who I can't imagine him succeeding next to Tyrese Maxey. I don't really have much confidence in his ability to add weight, and I'm not really sure how you rectify that. It would be one thing if Tyrese Maxey wasn't as proven as he was, but he's the number 2 guy. Some in the chat would argue co-franchise player. It's a little too far. Joel Embiid will jokingly say franchise player, but Tyrese Maxey is a
Nick
fixture
Batum called
of
him the franchise over the weekend when Tyrese was in Paris, I believe.
Nice to hear that Nico is still thinking of himself somewhat with the Sixers. See whether or not that holds true. But regardless of how you phrase it, Tyrese Maxey is insanely important. I don't think Rob fits at all, which is a shame because I think the offensive tools and skill set is very legitimate.
I think he's a potentially dynamic scorer, and I think if you're the Sixers and you say we just need bench help, like you get to that area of the draft and they don't love anybody there on the wing, or they don't want to take some of these other guys we're talking about who are more undersized shooting guards, then you could convince yourself to take a flyer on Dillingham and say, we have our 6th man. Like this guy could be a Lou Williams type of weapon off of the bench. Like Derek brought up the catch and shoot numbers, but he's dangerous as a pull-up guy. Good live ball dribble. His quickness is going to allow him to get by some guys, which is not true of a fair amount of guys in the guard spots.
We just talked about Carter.
For this class. Yeah. Right. Like handle is much better there.
Yep.
I do think I am probably factoring in the Kentucky thing where
they always
so many guys look better in the league than they did at Kentucky, and he looked pretty good offensively. So there's that, and he had a weird high school path as well. He was at Kanye West's like academy high school, right? And then after all the chaos with Kanye over the last few years, he leaves there. He briefly played for Overtime Elite during his senior season. And he was kind of up and down there. And I think that had a dampening impact on, how people look at him. So there's a chance you're getting a diamond in the rough and a guy who's going to be one of the more, because you kind of know what he is, right? You can plug him in pretty immediately and say, we're going to give him the keys to the bench and just kind of let him do his thing. And there's definitely value in that. But to Derek's point, the hope would be at 16 that you can get somebody who can play with Tyrese Maxey, somebody that is like maybe this person is not going to be a star, but somebody with solid starter level upside. Right. And I'm not sure, even in a best case scenario, Dillingham gets there. Now, if he is a Lou Williams level 6th man, I think that's certainly as much value as a token 5th starter can provide. But Lou, I feel like people don't or take for granted how good Lou was at his peak. So I think that'd be a high-end outcome for him. And I'm also the playmaking is okay, but it's not. Yeah. It's more he's using the scoring to draw attention, and he'll make some of the simple reads. He's not like an especially advanced playmaker at this point.
Yeah.
So making a case for him at 16. the scoring, as you just mentioned, the value that's there for a bench scorer. If he's not going to play with Tyrese Maxey, there will be times, I'm sure, where Nick Nurse will look at it and say, this guy just absolutely has it going.
Mm-hmm.
I can put him out there with 2 more wings and Joel Embiid on the back end where I can get away with it, hide him somewhere else. Sure, they'll find him and locate him on the defensive end, but will that take away from what he's doing on the other? And the fact that when we talk about these Kentucky guards and most of them being able to handle, and this guy can handle, when we talk about Devin Carter not being able to go left, Rob Dillingham can go anywhere on the floor, left or right, and he's explosive. The other part is the open space, the more space in the half-court set that he might have versus what he had in the collegiate game. Now, while we know that the head coach and that program gets you ready for the pros, but similar to what we saw with Tyrese Maxey, it takes them to get away from that, get to a pro style situation in their offense to be able to really showcase who they are in that open floor to do what they need to do and to be that scorer on the offensive end. So I look at that. I look at the transition possibilities with him. As small as he is, he can finish at the rim. He can get up. He can dunk on guys. He's not afraid to challenge people at the rim. That is something that intrigues me because as we talk about them, and not the fact that they just have 4 players on the roster. Let's look at the totality of the roster for what they had. They didn't have anybody like that coming off the bench. No one like that coming. Now, Campaign provided it.
I was going to say, we did see when Campaign had his moments, how much value that provided.
Right, and how important that was, where they may identify that maybe in free agency. Possible. But if they don't, and this is a guy that they look at, not to say that he's going to come in and do it right away from day one. Maybe it's going to take him a few games to get his legs underneath him to provide something like that, and maybe November or December. But there is value in that type of player for the offense to do that. The defense, unquestioned, got all of that. Playing with Tyrese Maxey is going to be very difficult, but the guy can score. And the name of the game also coming off the bench would be to put some points on the board. And if he can do that, there's something to him as being a member of this team.
I am worried. You brought up the finishing. That's where I think the size concerns could play a big factor at the next level. Because when you're 164 pounds at 6'1", you could be great at leading with your shoulder and initiating contact, doing all that. There are a lot of guys you are going to bounce off of at that level. Yeah. And so the finishing craft is going to be super important for him. He is, as far as like touch and tough shots, like you can see the makings of a really impactful game. But that's where I'm worried that he's going to have to figure out ways to, one, put on weight. That there's just no way around. He's not going to be able to carve out a productive career if he's sitting at 164 the rest of his life. That's just not going to work. But
how much do you compare him when you look at him to what Turk Smith, when we talk about Turk and the style of play? Similar in that way of that guy's a scorer. He's explosive. Of course, he went undrafted. We're just talking about the profile overall.
Sort of similar. I feel like Dillingham's got more diversity to his shot making than Turk did.
He's made more shots. Like Turk was always a guy that you looked at and said, like, I think he'll be able to shoot. But this guy,
I don't have much doubt that he's going to shoot at the next level.
We all silly like the mayor.